Works such as No More Heroes became popular with fans from the outset with strange and somewhat unusual stories and narratives, and the third version of this franchise is no exception. The story of the game, years after the events of the second edition, is going on, and we are once again taking control of the famous killer, Travis. The preeminence of No More Heroes 3 occurs years before the first version begins, where a curious young boy named Damon Riccitiello finds the crash site of a spaceship while cycling in the woods. Damon, searching the accident site, encounters the unconscious body of a very small space creature called Fu. He then takes Fu home and takes care of him. After a while, and with the recovery of Fu, a deep friendship quickly forms between him and Damon. Following this, during various interactions, Fu gives Damon a mysterious power, and eventually, together, they built a spaceship, and Fu separated from their friend and made their way to their planet, and at the last moment, Damon promises to return to Earth and meet him in the last moments. Years have passed since this incident, and now Damon has become a very successful person at Santa Destroy, and thanks to the power that Fu gave him years ago, he is now CEO of a big, powerful company that has a lot of wealth. But everything is priced, and in the following, we see Fu returning to Earth and Santa Clara. Fu's goal is clear: conquer the whole world and destroy it and build a new world. This is where we, Travis, come in. To save the world and stop Fu, we need to defeat all 10 members of the galactic superhero. In fact, the game takes on a tournament, both in terms of narrative and structure, that Travis must defeat each of the 10 superhero members to reach the higher members in order to finally face Fu itself. The story of the game, as you would expect from this series and similar works, is bizarre but at the same time fascinating and lovely. It is true that in many moments logic is violated during the game, but it should be noted that the structure of such titles is based on avoiding reality and being weird. If I want to evaluate and examine accurately, the story of the game has a series of general problems, especially in the characterization section, but in general it serves the gameplay and the atmosphere of the game, and this makes it possible to score a pass. As we all expect from a hack-and-slash game, the gameplay No More Heroes 3 is fast, crowded, engaging and full of different happenings. It remains the pivotal point of Travis's struggles, his famous katana, Beam Katana. A powerful sword, as its name implies, is composed of energy and offers various melee and ranged attacks and techniques to the gamer. The game's fights are its turning point, and both in the minor stages, which are often summarized as defense missions, and in the form of the main stages, we are witnessing fascinating and enjoyable struggles. From wrestling movements, to a variety of combos combined with katana as well as teleporting dropkick, it offers audiences and Travis plenty of tools to tind enemies. The gameplay is fluent, well-built and fun, and you'll feel like a powerful killer thanks to capabilities like Killer Slash. Katana Travis, as I mentioned, is made of energy and thus loses its charge by using it a lot. There are a few general ways to recharge your sword: eat sushi, perform wrestling movements, and, most importantly and most easily, by shaking the sword, will be charged over time. The game has a structure of the open world, though you shouldn't expect a vast world with plenty of content. Most of the game's side activities are summarized into part-time jobs and some stereotypical stages of defending a point. The first category are the sub-stages of voluntary missions, in which Travis performs various tasks to help people and receives money. From cleaning toilets, to gardening and collecting garbage, doing these minigames will give you the money you need to participate in each arena. The second category of sub-stages are defense missions, which in the form of these steps, you have to defend the point and fight a few waves of enemies and defeat them. These steps quickly become repetitive and lack the depth and charm necessary for the audience. The structure of the game as a whole is the same. Do side activities to earn the money needed to enter the tournament and face each major enemy, defeat his various enemies and eventually the boss and take his place and recollect money for the next tournament. Defeat various enemies and finally boss and take his place and start raising money again for the next tournament. The side activities of the game have a good variety, other than defense missions, but the problem is that in the long run they become extremely tedious, and on the other hand, the game world, which itself has 5 different regions, could host much more events, activities and stages. But instead, the entire sub-activities of the game are summarized into uniform and repetitive defense missions, which, after a few times, I don't think you'll be particularly willing to do most of them. The vacancy of some structural and fictional sub-stages is strongly felt. For example, in the form of Travis, we could solve the problems of the people of the city or stop the aliens' plans. Either way, I have to say that the game world had much greater potential and it wasn't used at all. Of course, the game remains loyal to its classical structure, and perhaps one of the reasons for the absence of such modern and new stages is the same. but as you know, staying true to the roots does not contradict the up-to-date elements and logical structures. Finally, I have to say that boss fights are the best part of the campaign, because multiple struggles with ordinary enemies are not that engaging and entertaining for a long time, and this is boss fight itself and the battle with the 10 members of the spaces, which is the culmination of the gameplay. The bosses, capabilities and fighting style are different, and fighting most of them is very enjoyable and engaging. Especially if you experience the game on the degree of hardness of spicy, equivalent to the same degree of hardness, the boss fights will be fascinating, challenging and fun. But the main problem with No More Heroes 3 is perhaps that, as appealing as boss fights are, fighting regular enemies or doing minigames is not fun. Perhaps the absence of the correct sub-steps in the account I mentioned a little earlier had not been effective in this regard. The game No More Heroes 3 is not that long and lasts 10 to 12 hours in general, but nevertheless, after the last half of the first half, personally, the fight against ordinary enemies in each section became very uniform, boring and repetitive. And in each episode, I was just looking forward to fighting boss fight at every stage, and I didn't find it so appealing to me to fight weaker and more conventional enemies. The game's graphics are No More Heroes, a combination of cel shade and some pixel elements specific to the series. Of course, instead of playing, we also see two-dimensional anime cutscenes. The biggest strength of the game's graphics is the attractive coloring of its various environments. The wide range of colors used makes the audience's eyes tired later and, on the other hand, environments, enemies and struggles seem more vivid and attractive. I had heard that the Nintendo Switch version of the game suffered greatly from drop frame problems, but fortunately on the PlayStation 4, I didn't see frame drops, page ruptures and other technical and graphical problems. In the end, I have to say that the music and the sound of the game completely get a passing grade, although it never goes beyond the normal level. The charming soundtrack, with its fast-paced rhythm during struggles, adds to the joy of battles large and small, and in general, if you've experienced similar fantasy games, you'll be well acquainted with the music and sound of such works. The game No More Heroes 3 is the obvious example of a modest effect. A title that has fluent struggles and attractive boss fights but suffers from severe weakness in the minor stages, an empty world in the main repetitive stages. If you're a fan of classic hack and slash titles, experience this title, otherwise there are far more quality titles that you'd better spend your money on.